Heel. Today I want to talk about how we handle our full service dogs when we take them into town. This is a little bakery. We actually go here all the time with our training dogs in practice. So it's a Sunday morning, there's a lot of action going on. And the first thing I want to just take note of is this is Maggie, and she actually came for a little bit of reactivity. And a lot of times when we have a dog that has some reactivity, the owners get very nervous being in town, especially when it is a little bit busy and there's a lot of unpredictable variables. So I want to talk about how I would come downtown and what I would do and how I would handle different circumstances. So the first thing is, you could see I've sat down and I've told Maggie nothing. I haven't given her a command. And it's important that the minute you get to a new place, you don't just start shouting out commands at them, because it's not fair to the dog. You haven't even given them a chance to acclimate to the environment. Normally I give the dog about 3 to 5 minutes to settle in. And if the dog is, of course, doing any sort of like lunging or barking, or there's just way too many people and I need to have that element of control, then I'll add in my obedience. Oh, you guys are fine. Yeah, go ahead. You're fine. Then I'll add in my obedience. So Maggie has shown me, she is sat down, but she is very alert. You can tell by her ears, you can tell how she's constantly checking and looking into the environment. So right now I'm just going to give her that time to see if she adjusts on her own. And if she does, great. If not, then I'll proceed to showing and helping her even further.
You're so pretty.
Thank you. No.
No.
So I handled it. She barked. I told her no. I popped the leash. And that's it. Again, I'm not giving her any obedience commands. Now, if he would have kind of pushed more and like asked to pet her or even stuck her hand out, that's when I would have stood up and said, hey, she's in training. And I would have put myself between the dog and him. But that right there, no big deal. She told him she needed space. I told her that's not her job to tell him, that it's my job to tell him that if he's getting too close. So now you can see after that, she's standing. So she's a little bit more under alert. My leash stays loose, so I'm not sending mixed signals to her. And again, I am situationally aware, but I am not feeding her any sort of cues that says that she needs to be nervous or feel the need to protect me. Going back to what we said, the reason I don't give her a command, the reason I don't sit down and immediately tell her to down, is because I don't want to have to sit here and manage the down the entire time. This falls to me into the category of mannerisms, as opposed to me micromanaging her with obedience. A lot of times we feel more in control when we constantly are telling the dog what to do, and you actually are more in control, but then it doesn't give the dog the chance to be able to mimic us and to be able to take in the environment and say, okay, my person is sitting. It appears we're going to be here for however long. She's not giving me any cues that she's going to get up and we're going to leave. So therefore, you would want the dog to mimic you. The more stimulating the environment, normally the longer it takes for a dog to settle in. And then when you have a dog who's naturally more alert and aware of the environment, then you have what she's doing now, to where she's just constantly ears up, left, right looking. Now that I've given her ample time to settle in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to take the information that she's given me. She's never really relaxed, so I'm going to help her by how I position her when I sit. So knowing that she is a little bit more environmentally sensitive, what I can do is I can tuck her back in here, move my chair here, and now what I've done is I've put myself a little bit more in between the people and the dog. Again, I have not given her any sort of formal command, because aside from her reacting at that guy, which I handled by telling her no, pop in the leash, Aside from that, she hasn't pulled. She hasn't jumped up on the table. She's not nuzzling me for attention. And that's another thing, is when I go in town with my dogs, I don't sit here and just pet my dog. The reason I don't do that, especially when I'm working on socialization, is because I don't want to close off this little bubble of me and my dog thinks like, okay, it's safe here, we don't let anybody else around us, because then you can create resource guarding of the person without even realizing you're doing it. So going to town and socializing with my dog is not about me and her sitting in a corner petting each other. It's about us being out in the world and saying, you know what, people walk by, dogs walk by, there was a skateboarder earlier, and you can deal and acclimate to the environment without me having to constantly tell you what to do and what not to do. There are times where if the environment is just too overwhelming, or if I want to do emails or text messages and I don't want to have to be on guard, so to say, that I absolutely will put a muzzle on a dog for the dog's comfort, for my comfort, and for the respect of the people. I want to show you guys what that looks like. So when I use, and you have a few options with your muzzles. You have more of a basket muzzle, and then you have more of like a halty, like a head halter type of muzzle. I like these a lot, especially in, when you have a dog who's not, I don't worry that Maggie's necessarily gonna, you know, bite somebody, but she will bark and react at them. So this gives just a little bit more freedom to where I have this Velcro strap so I can make it looser or tighter accordingly. So you can see she can still open her muzzle, she can still lick, eat, take treats, whatever it is. But again, it's the perception that we're giving to other people. So normally when I have this on, and for the example of this little film, I'm gonna put her back out here because I want you to observe how people act differently. You're always gonna have the people who, no matter what, I mean, even if they had a muzzle on, where they're gonna stick their hand out or ask, you know, oh, why does she have to wear a muzzle? And again, you know, I just deal with those people accordingly. But for the most part, when someone sees your dog that has this device on their face, they are more cautious in how they approach. Sometimes you'll even have people that will just kind of like clear the sidewalk and go away from you. And for me, that's perfectly fine because I'm trying to build this dog's confidence and tell this dog like, hey, you can trust me. I'm not gonna put you in a situation where someone's gonna grab you or pet you, especially when you don't like that. This is the type of dog who has her bubble of people, and they've all earned her respect, whether through relationship or obedience. And she is not, you know, the lab who's on the street walking and saying hi to everybody. It's just not her personality, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with her. But it also doesn't mean that you shouldn't take her places because of that. Good, so we're just gonna have a few more people pass by. And again, you know, we're just reading her body language. She's been trained with this muzzle, so she could care less that it's on. It's no different to her than me wearing this little hairband on my arm. When you train it correctly, the body language of the dog does not change. It just becomes another tool in your toolbox. And you can notice there, I mean, everybody just walked by, mind their business. Sometimes you'll have somebody who's walking a dog and they'll see this and know and just automatically take their dog around or give your dog space. So inadvertently, what I'm doing when I use a muzzle is I'm actually training people, and I'm training people on how they should act around dogs, as opposed to this culture that we have now that everybody sees your dog and thinks it's a petting zoo. So do not be, a lot of people are like, oh, they think this is a bad tool to use. They think that it means that their dog is a bad dog. And I completely disagree. I've come down here with social labs and put this on just so people would leave me alone and I would be able to get some work done. Now you can see that Maggie has settled into the environment. And the reason I know that is she laid down. Down is a submissive position. Her ears are still perked up. She would never be the type of dog that would like fall asleep downtown. It would take a lot of exposure, and I mean going downtown for hours and hours and hours before she let her guard down that much. You could see, and good, there's some dogs coming, so you'll get to see another example. And I'll still be respectful too. Like there's times where even with people walking with dogs, if I'm out to eat, I would put them back here, not necessarily to hide them, but more just for the flow of the sidewalk. Just I don't want people to, you know, see her and have to halt and stop. And so I try to be respectful of the environment. Going back to when is it appropriate to give an actual command to the dog, and that is if the dog is displaying any pulling, lunging, jumping, trying to eat the food off of my table, then that is a dog that needs to be told what to do. You could, at that point though, you have to make sure that you manage that position the entire time. So if you put the dog in a down, you have to, hey, good down, give a treat here and there. Sometimes you even have to like release the dog up, walk it around, bring it back and put it back. Now, everybody's worst fear when you're in public is a toddler running up to your dog. That is, even as a trainer, that's our worst fear. That is another reason of why it is crucial that when you decide you're going to, and I gave that example because there's a bunch of kids coming, is you're always ready to be able to get up and say, hey guys, she's in training. Don't be afraid to put yourself in between the dog and the kids, okay? Because you're always advocating for the dog, and it could be a learning moment for the kids and for the family to be able to explain to the parent, like, hey, every dog on earth isn't friendly. And it doesn't even matter if you ask, can my kid pet your dog? Because even then, I would never put my dog into that situation. Because if they fail, that is a big fail, and it's not fair for the dog. So the most gracious way I have found is just saying, hey, she's in training. She really doesn't want to be pet by you. And if the people get offended, that's on them. Again, it goes back to the culture and mentality of everyone needs to know that your dog is not here to be pet by the entire world. It doesn't do any good for your dog, and it teaches your dog that outside people are more stimulating than the person who's they're supposed to be engaged with, which is their owner, which is their handler. If I had a social dog, maybe 1 out of 10 people, I would release the dog up and say, all right, sure, you can say hi. But even then, with my social dogs, what I don't want to teach them is that if somebody walks over and starts kneeling down and making kissy face, that means that they can just get up and go say hi to them. That's not how it works. Maggie has settled pretty well into the environment. I said her name and now she's like, what? But this would be a good session for me, a good successful session. And what I would do at this point is I would actually switch environments. So that's what we're gonna do.